Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We're less than a week away from the 2024 NBA draft. It kind of sneaks up on you like it does every year, but the NBA finals are over. The Boston Celtics are your 2024 NBA champions. Congrats to them. But we're moving past that now. We're talking about the NBA draft, one that doesn't have the surefire top pick like in years past. But as we get closer, we get more details. A lot of stuff comes out, and I just want to talk about it and just what could happen on draft night, the whole first round, with a trade in there as well. And we just had a trade right before I hopped on here. Alex Caruso to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Josh Giddey. Pretty surprising trade for both sides. I really love it for OKC, and the Bulls are clearly more buying into the future than they are in being competitive right now, and I think that's probably the right decision. So we'll see what happens with that, how good Caruso makes OKC, a team that was already the 1 seed last year. But we're not really here to talk about trade season. We're here to talk about the draft. So let's just get into it, and let's start off with a number 1 pick, a new number 1 pick, and that is Donovan Clingan coming in at number 1 for the Atlanta Hawks. For a lot of the process, especially when the Hawks first landed the first pick, a lot of people, including myself, were thinking it would be Alex Sarr, the big out of the NBL, for the Perth Wildcats, I believe, Alex Sarr. But more of a kind of developmental, more of a projection than a real player right now. But we know what Donovan Clingan is, and we know what he's going to bring. He's going to be a double-double threat right away. He's probably going to average over 2 blocks a game, going to be pretty efficient at the rim. And if they keep Trae Young, then you have a really good lob threat for Trae if you get Clingan, a good rim protector right now, and just a surefire big. Nick Claxton is one that comes to mind, a guy that averaged, I believe, just about a double-double last year, over 2 blocks, and shot about 63% from the field. The efficiency in college to Claxton in the NBA was pretty similar. I've seen some Rudy Gobert comparisons. I don't know if the defense is quite that level, but I also think his offense is better than someone like Walker Kessler. So we'll see where he ends up in between those guys. But Clingan, I think, is going to be a surefire starting center. He is probably the best bet of what you know he's going to be in this entire draft class. And the Hawks play it somewhat safe here and say we know Clingan's going to be good, and that's really all we need to know. So they take him at number 1. 7'3" with his shoes on, pretty big. Really good size-wise, 280 pounds, 20.8 points per 36. All the numbers are per 36 just to kind of put the guys on a similar scale. 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, and 64% from the field. And they get their starting big of the future and can be a really good player and will be, at the very least, a solid starting big for years to come. At number 2, we have the Washington Wizards, and I have them taking Reed Shepherd. Shooting guard, can play some point guard. It feels like Jordan Poole is going to be the point guard of the future in Washington now. He was really good as the point guard down the stretch, so why not get a guy who can space next to him as well as take some of the facilitating duties, because Reed Shepherd is a really good passer on top of the shooting. But one thing is for darn sure, this guy can shoot the rock. One of the best shooting prospects we've seen come out in a really long time. You can just look at the numbers here. I had to get them. Catch and shoot and off the dribble, 51% on both of them. On threes that are NBA distance, 49%. 52% on corner threes, 50% off of screens. Even on guarded catch and shoots, he's shooting over 45%. And if it's unguarded catch and shoot, over 57%. If you leave this dude open, it's over. And even if he's not open, it might not matter. He's that good of a shooter. And I just think he's going to be a fantastic shooter at the NBA level. And even if you just get the shooting, he's going to be a solid player. So don't overthink it. Don't take some guy that might be good. Reed Shepherd is going to be a lights out shooter. I think might be a better player than someone like Tyler Hero. I comped him to Derek White. It's one that I've liked. I've seen it in a few different places, and he gets the steals, he pokes, he gets into passing lanes like Derek White does. He's not the all-around defender like Derek White, but the playmaking, the rebounding, the shooting, it's all very reminiscent. Just a good all-around player, and your backcourt mate of the future with Jordan Poole in Washington. I just think he's too good of a shooter to pass up. 6'3" in shoes. I saw something after the combine trying to say he's 6'1". They've measured players in shoes forever. Steph Curry always been measured at 6'3", but that was with shoes on, similar size to Steph. There was that joke, it it wasn't necessarily a joke at the time, but about Lonzo Ball being Steph Curry with a 40-inch vertical. Reed Shepherd has the shooting, and he had a 42-inch vertical, I believe, at the combine. The second best of anybody there. It was phenomenal, really good at the combine, going to be a really good player, and Reed Shepherd to me is the pick at 2. And then we have a trade for number 3, because the Rockets have been linked to Reed Shepherd. Makes the most sense to get a shooter off the bench, so they move back from 3 to number 9 and get a shooter in the process with Luke Kennard while offloading Jock Landale. They already got Steven Adams from the Grizzlies, so they have a potential backup 5. They don't necessarily need Landale as much as when they signed him last offseason, and they get that shooter off the bench in Luke Kennard, with it being a more experienced one as well. If the Rockets want to take a playoff jump, I think Luke Kennard would be a solid option, and they get to stay in the top 10. But the Grizzlies are trading up to get their big Alexandre Sarr out of the NBL. Compared to Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot, I think he's a better rebounder. I just do. I think he'll help with the rebounding. He'll block a lot of shots as well. And getting 2 good defenders in the post like this, I think will be super helpful. You could play Sarr at the 5 or the 4, same as you could with Jackson, and has some hypothetical shooting as well. We've seen him try to stretch the floor. We'll see what that ends up being, but he can guard 2 through 5 pretty easily. Is kind of a wing trapped in the center's body. So the defensive potential of these 2 guys, of Smart, of some of the other guys that they have there, Vince Williams, Desmond Bane is a competent defender. I think it could be really interesting what you see with Memphis, kind of a grit and grind 2.0 with how good the defense would be, but the offense would be better than that because Jaren can really space the floor, Ja Morant is a superstar, and Desmond Bane's a really good offensive player as well. So getting a guy like Sarr next to Jackson, I think could unlock more defensive opportunities. They're clearly looking for a big. They're rumored to try to trade up for Klingon, but if Klingon's not available, they'll trade up, they'll get Sarr. I like this for them. I think it could make a big deal for them in making a leap next season, and I think if they're going to trade up, you got to get a big, and it's either Klingon or Sarr. So Sarr's on the board at 3. The Rockets already saw their guy go to Washington, so why not make a trade that benefits both sides? At number 4, we have the San Antonio Spurs. Now them taking small forward Tijan Salon, a Frenchman, and a good friend of Victor Wembanyama. Really kind of the potential guy in this draft. Really good frame, really physical, and reportedly is always in the gym, which is something you love to hear. If there's going to be a Giannis of this draft, I've heard a lot of people say it would be Salon. So why not take a shot? You're not a fantastic team right now. You have the ability to get guys that can grow into better players. And this shows Victor Wembanyama, hey, we're committed to you. We want you to be happy. We're going to get a guy that you really care about, you've played with in the past, and presents a lot of upside for us as well. 6'9", 18 years old, is going to be a good defensive player right away just because of the frame. 15 points per 36, 6 rebounds. I've seen some comparisons to Obi Toppin because of the athleticism, the ability to move across the court pretty well, and I just think he's going to be a solid player. As one of the guys who's been a bigger riser of this draft class. 4 is a little rich. Some people would say maybe it should be Risa Shea or it should be Matas Buzelis, but I'm going to have the Spurs take Salon here at 4 as kind of a gesture towards Wemby and an upside play at 4. At number 5, we have the Detroit Pistons, and I'm taking a small forward Zachary Risa Shea out of France, playing for JL Borg. If he's here and you're Detroit, you kind of just have to take him. Was heavily rumored to be a potential number 1 overall pick. And if he's here at 5 and you're Detroit, you say, okay, we'll take him. The talent's there. It's pretty obvious. The shooting, 39% from 3 this season for Borg. Had a pretty bad stretch basically from January through March. But got a little better shooting-wise towards the end of the year. Early on in the season, he was shooting nearly 50% from 3 and it dropped off. So it's kind of up in the air how good of a shooter he really is. The defense is there. The defense is going to be there right away. 17 points per 36 as well, but really no playmaking. The ball didn't really run through him at all for Borg. He wasn't really an initiator of any offense, but when you already have Cade and Ivy, I just don't think that's a bit as big of a problem. Because they don't need the playmaking. They need more shooting, more spacing. So Risa Shea, I think, is the clear pick here. Dalton Connect, a pretty solid shooter. Cody Williams, a decent shooter. But if Risa Shea is on the board, I think he is the talent over those 2 guys. So Detroit takes him here at 5. For the Hornets at number 6, I've been taking shooting guard Stephon Castle out of UConn. played on that national championship team this season and was a huge part of why they won. I don't think he really has point guard upside. If you go and watch the tape of him at UConn, there's just not a ton of creation. Even on pick and roll stuff, it was almost always for him as a scorer. It wasn't really for him as an initiator. So I'm not sure the point guard stuff will be there. But with LaMelo Ball already on the team, you don't really need it. You get a really good defensive guard next to LaMelo. And if the spacing ever picks up, because we saw some good free throw stuff down in the later half of the season that could project him to be a good shooter in the future, then I think you have a really, really good player on your hands and maybe an all-star. He slots in nice between LaMelo and Brandon Miller, and the defense is fantastic. Is probably the best perimeter defender in this draft class, and one of the best we've seen in a while. A lot of Drew Holiday comparisons there as well, but Iguodala is more of a wing that can play make a little and plays really good defense. I think is a good comp. It's one I saw from Kevin O'Connor, and I don't mind it. I think it's a good comparison. At number 7, we have the Portland Trailblazers. I've been taking Matas Buzelis out of the G League Ignite, a Franz Wagner type, but doesn't have the shooting. I know Franz Wagner wasn't a good shooter this season, but I think he's going to be a good shooter throughout his career. I just think he's too talented to just have the shooting fall off a cliff. But Buzelis right now hasn't had the shooting. He did in high school, so there is some shooting upside there. But even if he doesn't bring that, there's just so many different things he does. He can play pretty well off the dribble. The dribble needs a little bit of work, but is a solid scorer, a pretty good rebounder for a wing, and blocks a lot of shots as well for a guy who's not really in the interior defensively. Has good timing on blocking shots. Can play make a little as well. He's just good all-around player is Matas Buzelis. Also has a little FU to his game, is a little cocky, but I like it. You saw it when he was at All-Star Weekend, hitting a game winner, and just had a lot of confidence to him, and is just a player who I think can overachieve and be better than maybe people expected. Yes, it was kind of a down year in the Ignite, but they already have Scoot on the team. They've had some Ignite guys, and I just don't think they'd be worried about it. They don't need guards. They have Simons, they have Sharp, they have Scoot. So what they really need is a wing, and they take one here in Buzelis, who has pretty good upside. At number 8, the San Antonio Spurs are here, and I have them taking point guard Devin Carter. I do like Nikola Topic, but the injury stuff is a little bit concerning. Had a second ACL tear. It's not really what you want to see, but it's reported that they're interested in both Castle and Devin Carter as well. So with Devin Carter on the board here at 8, I think the Spurs would be really interested in taking him. Had the highest vertical at the combine at about 42.5 inches, and is a really good rebounder for a guard. Nearly 9 rebounds for a point guard is insane. 20 points as well at Providence. Was a fantastic breakout season for Carter. Just about 4 assists. I don't think on most teams you would love it if he's your full-time point guard, but with Wemby, his job's going to be a lot easier. And on top of that, they already have Trey Jones. So if they want to do some playing those guys together, sharing the floor, maybe you play Devin Carter at the 2, I think that could be interesting, but is going to be a good defender, is going to get a lot of rebounds, and is pretty efficient as well at 47% from the field. Reminds me a lot of what we saw from Bruce Brown in Denver as a pretty good playmaker. He wasn't really the point guard for them, but had some stretches where he brought the ball up the floor and did a solid job. Also a good rebounder. And I think if you are San Antonio, you're happy with that. Already 22 years old, should be a decent impact player right away. And I think kind of fills one of the bigger needs in the guard spots. At number 9, we have the Houston Rockets. This one coming from that trade that we did earlier. They jump back from 3 to 9, get Luke Kennard, and other than taking Cody Williams here, reminds me of Denver Nuggets Jeremy Grant. Not the guy that we've seen in Detroit or Portland. I don't think he has that level of scoring upside, but is a nice off-ball cutter, can space the floor a little bit, and just be complementary to the guys you already have. I think that's what you're getting in Cody Williams. I just don't think he has the upside of his brother Jalen, who could really be an all-star in this league. I don't think Cody Williams is going to be that, but could be a nice rotational piece on a solid team. 6'8", a little light at 180 pounds, but 15 points per 36, 55% from the field, real efficient, and 41.5% from 3. Does have some injury issues, missed some of the season for Colorado, but overall, I don't think you'd be too worried about it. And you could slot him in the backcourt. He could play a little shooting guard off the bench or small forward. playing next to guys like Ahmed Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, and some of the other young guys on that bench mob for Houston. At number 10, we have the Utah Jazz, and on them taking small forward Dalton Knecht out of Tennessee. Was arguably the best player in college basketball this season. Just a lights-out scorer, transferring in from, I believe, a mid-major, and then comes into Tennessee and is pretty much immediately their best player. 6'7", 210 pounds, 25.5 points per 36. Just an elite scorer right now. 5.8 rebounds, 46% from the field, and nearly 40% from deep. The Jazz need more spacing, and I think Knecht could slide in nicely next to Lauri Markkanen in the front court and give you a little more scoring as well. Because off the bench, they don't really have a ton of scoring. Colin Sexton and Markkanen in the starting lineup can put the ball in the basket, but to get a nice complementary guy who can space, who can attack the rim, I think it'd be a solid fit in Utah. At number 11, we have the Chicago Bulls, and them taking forward Ron Holland out of the G League Ignite. They have even more guards now after the Josh Giddey trade that are young and are important to the team. Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, and now Josh Giddey. What they really need is forwards or bigs, but I don't really see a center that's worth taking right here, like necessarily. Vooch is still under contract as well, so you probably stick it out with Vooch. They're probably just going to keep him around. But reminds me a little bit of Cam Whitmore. Good scoring forward who shoots a lot, but you're okay with it because the scoring is still there. The energy is there. 2.6 steals, gets in passing lanes, a lot like Whitmore does. 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, but 22 points per 36 is what you're excited about. Patrick Williams didn't necessarily work out if you're Chicago, so getting a new young forward in there who would bring excitement to the city, I think would be a solid pick and would be pretty good value here at 11 for the type of offensive talent that you're getting in Ron Holland. At number 12, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. They did get Alex Caruso just a few minutes ago, so a guard wouldn't necessarily make sense even though Rob Dillingham is on the board. Saw them taking Khalil Ware, center out of Indiana. A little Miles Turner-esque with the shot blocking ability and the ability to space the floor a little bit, but 7'1", 230 pounds. Definitely bigger than Chet Holmgren size-wise, but the bonus here is that he doesn't necessarily take OKC out of their play style, but gives them more of that size and physicality that they desperately need, as well as rebounding. 11 rebounds per 36, but can still space, so it still fits the mold that you had with Chet. You could play the two guys together and go ultra big, or just have him in a reserve role for Chet, and not necessarily change the pace drastically, but give you a little bit more rebounding and size against some of those bigger teams that you might run into in a playoff setting. At number 13, we have the Kings here, and them taking point guard Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky. They're likely going to lose Malik Monk this offseason, so why not get another scoring guard out of Kentucky? And they do it here with Rob Dillingham. Kind of Lou Williams-esque. He's probably going to be a bench microwave scorer like he was at Kentucky. Came off the bench, played about 20 minutes a game, and just put the ball in the basket. 19 years old, 6'3", 165 pounds, definitely a little light. Can fit in the backcourt alongside Davion Mitchell. I think his scoring and shooting would complement Mitchell's defense, and maybe they would offset each other's weaknesses a little bit. 23.5 points per 36, 6 assists, pretty solid facilitator as well, and 44% from three. Who knows if that's sustainable, but it was really good this year at Kentucky. The playmaking picked up, didn't make as many selfish decisions as you maybe saw in the overtime elite, and it was a positive sign of growth and makes him a lottery pick despite some of the size concerns. And the Kings, I think, get pretty good value because to me, Dillingham is a top 10 talent, slips down the board a little bit with some other guys rising up, and the Kings get him at 13. At number 14, I have the Blazers taking center Zach Edey out of Purdue. I had this last time as well. I just think he's probably the best talent on the board. Zach Edey, to me, is a lottery level talent. He was just so dominant at Purdue. I have a hard time believing all of it will go away once he reaches the NBA level. I just don't think that's true. 7'5" of shoes on, 300 pounds, is a massive human being. And even if he doesn't start, DeAndre Ayton is a really good big man for them right now and is a good quality starter. But you could bring Edey off the bench, and I think he could give you a solid 15 minutes a game or something like that. You don't need him out there 30 minutes a game. I don't think he could necessarily do that anyway. But as a relief piece for Ayton, a lob guy for players like Scoot and Simons, I like it. I think it makes sense, and it could just be a kind of grind it out, rebounder, shot blocker like Zubac is for the Clippers. At number 15, I have the Heat taking point guard Nikola Topic out of Serbia, out of the Adriatic League. Reminds me a little bit of Goran Dragic in the way that he plays, who was an all-star for the Heat back in 2018, All-NBA for the Suns in 2014. Just was a really solid player for a lot of his career, and I think Topic is going to be a good player as well. Slips down the board because of the injury concerns, but the talent is so obvious here that the Heat kind of have to do it. They need a little more point guard play too. Did get Terry Rozier, swapped him out for Kyle Lowry, which I really liked. I think is a solid upgrade, but could still use a little more facilitating, a little more point guard play. And the upside with Topic would be really nice for them. Could be a solid 15 point per game scorer in the NBA. I'm pretty confident about it. 19 points per 36 in the Adriatic, and 7 assists as well. You just don't see performances like that usually in these foreign leagues, because if you take away the per 36, his normal counting numbers were still really solid. 52% from the field as well, very efficient. Not as good from 3, but does a good job getting in the lane. Kind of has a little bit of the stop and go stuff that we see with Luka Doncic. Not nearly as big as Luka, but a little bit of a similar play style in that way. But I just think he's going to be a really good pro, and would probably be the first or second best international guy in this draft class to me. But the injury concerns do drop him here down to 15. At 16, the Sixers taking forward Tristan da Silva out of Colorado. A ton of interest from good teams on this guy, because people just believe he's going to come in and be a good rotation player, and I can totally see it. Compared to Kyle Anderson, a good rotational player from Minnesota, 215 pounds, 17 points per 36 for Colorado, 49% from the field, and nearly 40% from deep. Is just going to come in, give you good minutes, space the floor, and you're not going to be worried about him being a liability on either end of the floor, which is a luxury that a lot of teams don't have with their reserve players. At number 17, I have the Lakers taking point guard Isaiah Collier out of USC. Something I did last time as well. I just think the star level with Collier is something that the Lakers would be interested in. Reminds me a lot of Cole Anthony coming out of UNC, who was also a very highly ranked prospect. Collier was the number 1 in his class. I don't remember if Cole Anthony was 1, but he was definitely top 5 in his class as well, and had a somewhat disappointing season at North Carolina, as Collier did at South California, but I think he can come in and be a solid player like Cole Anthony has developed into the Magic. A really solid scoring piece, can give you some shooting, and has really come a long way. One down season in college doesn't necessarily mean all the stuff before is invaluable. Maybe it just wasn't a good situation, but you get in LA, you can feed the ball to LeBron and AD, Reeves, Rui. There are guys who can score, and you don't have to do everything. It's a pretty stress-free environment outside of it being the Lakers, but the players around him would make his job a lot easier, and he can score the ball as well. So if you need him to be kind of a bench scoring type, he has the ability to do that, but can also facilitate, and I think would be a solid player who could maybe get real minutes earlier than people would expect. At number 18, I have the Magic taking Jared McCain. It's my favorite pick in the whole draft. It's just so obvious. The Magic need shooting, so why not get one of the best shooters here at 18? Kind of Seth Curry-esque, not a Steph Curry level shooter, but more like his brother Seth. 20 years old, out of Duke, 6'3", 41% from 3, and we saw huge 3-point performances in the NCAA tournament, so not a player who's afraid of the bright lights, but the Magic more than anything else need more spacing, so why not get McCain in there and just give some relief to the other guys that are out there. At number 19, we have the Toronto Raptors, this pick coming from the Pascal Siakam deal, and now them taking shooting guard Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. They just need upside. They need talent on this team, on a roster that's kind of devoid of it right now after trading off some of their key guys at the deadline. And Jacoby Walter is just a very talented offensive player at getting his own basket, at creating from others as well. 16 points per 36, 5 rebounds. Was pretty efficient early in the year, but it dropped off as time went on. I've seen comparisons to Chris Middleton. I see some Malik Monk in his game as well. And if you're the Raptors, why not take a guy that has 20 point per game upside? You don't know if he'll get there, but he does have a lot of scoring talent. So the Raptors need that. Why not just take a shot on Walter at 19? At number 20, I have the Cavs going point guard Tyler Kolek out of Marquette. A a veteran of the college game, a very good playmaker, 8 assists per 36, nearly shoots 40% from deep and 17 points as well. Can rebound pretty well for being 6'3". Reminds me a lot of Trey Jones, not quite as good of a assist to turnover guy as his brother Tyus, but what we saw from Trey in San Antonio last season, he's just a solid point guard. Ricky Rubio left the Cavs right before last season, and they were kind of left without a real solid backup point guard. I like Craig Porter Jr., but he's more of a combo guard to me than anything else. He's not really a pure point guard. They have Ty Jerome, but there's clearly room to go up from there. So why not take a guy who's been kind of a riser throughout the pre-draft process as well, has really impressed a lot of teams in workouts and interviews. So he might not be at the board at 20, but if he is, I think the Cavs are a good fit. At number 21, I have the Pelicans taking a point guard as well. Carlton Bub Carrington out of Pitt was one of the biggest risers throughout the college season, a player who wasn't super highly regarded. I believe he was a 3-star coming out of high school, but played really well at Pitt. I think he had a triple-double in his first game. He impressed as soon as he stepped on the floor. Has some natural scoring talent. The efficiency, especially from deep, hasn't been all that good, but I think the upside is there. Could be an Emmanuel Quickley type, who we saw develop into a good starting point guard with the Raptors this season, but 18 years old, 6'5", 195 pounds. The age is also a really big upside because he has a lot of room to grow. 15 points, 5.5 assists per 36, and 4.5 rebounds. Got some real playmaking to him. The Pelicans haven't really had a real point guard for a while now. Been trying that CJ McCollum experiment, which I just don't think McCollum is a real long-term point guard. So Carrington makes a lot of sense for the Pelicans at 21. At 22, the Phoenix Suns here. I'm taking shooting guard Terrence Shannon Jr. out of Illinois. Recently cleared of all charges. He was, really had some tough legal cases against him, but it turned out that the women involved were not telling the truth, and he was declared innocent, completely innocent of all I don't know the legal words of all the stuff there. But even if he wasn't, the Suns have shown no hesitancy to be worried about that, because they did try to trade for Miles Bridges, who has some clear domestic stuff against him. So that wouldn't have really worried them anyway, but Shannon proved to be innocent in the court of law, and is just a really good offensive player. Is one of the best scorers in the country for years now, and was really good for Illinois last year. 24.5 points per 36, nearly 48% from the field as well. Just a quick bucket getter off the bench, a microwave scoring type. It's been rumored that Eric Gordon might not come back. They need scoring off the bench badly. The Suns just aren't deep enough right now. So to get a guy off the bench, a rookie who could average 12 points or more right away off the bench, why not do that? He's a good scorer. He would like to learn from under KD, just as Cam Thomas did with Brooklyn, and I think could really help him grow into an even better player. KD could help Shannon. At 23, I have the Bucks taking power forward Tyler Smith out of the Ignite program, a really high upside prospect who did a pretty good job in the Ignite this season. Shot 48% from the field and 36% from deep. If the three-point shot can become even more reliable, I think you're looking at a near star level player. 6'10", really lanky, plays good defense, good offensive score, especially down low. And the Bucks need a little more size. Brook Lopez getting old. Bobby Portis, who knows how long he'll keep up this level of play. So to get a guy who could play alongside Giannis, I think makes sense. If the shooting all comes together, we could be looking at a Lauri Markkanen level of player, but that's not necessarily a lock. That's definitely something that is up to, that would be the max likely. But even at his worst, I think you're looking at a Trey Lyles type guy who's been really good for Sacramento as a bench big, and Tyler Smith could be the same for Milwaukee. At number 24, we have the Knicks. I've been taking center Kyle Filipowski out of Duke. Isaiah Hartenstein, I believe, will be a free agent this offseason. If he leaves, they'll need a replacement backup big who could give you something similar, and I think Filipowski could do that. Give you some solid defense, some shot blocking, nearly 2 blocks per 36, 19 points as well, solid rebounder, and is just going to be a complimentary big more than anything else. He's not going to demand a ton of touches. I don't love Filipowski's game personally because it felt like every time he faced physical bigs in college, he got kind of exposed, but does feel like a similar type of player to Hartenstein, despite some of the lesser physicality stuff. but feels like a big that the Knicks would like as a backup to Mitch Robinson. At number 25, I'm taking small forward Ryan Dunn. Feels like the prototypical Knicks guy, a player that Tom Thibodeau would love. A defense-first player all the way, someone who tries super hard on the defensive end, has some offensive shortcomings, but so does Josh Hart, and he loves Josh Hart. So Herb Jones, I think, is the ceiling with Ryan Dunn. Even at the floor, you're looking at Andre Roberson, who was a really good defensive player, but the offense was so non-existent, he was basically played out of the modern NBA. So we'll see if Ryan Dunn's offense can come along a little ways, but it's not quite as bad as some people might say. 56% true shooting isn't awful. The 10.6 points per 36 isn't really great, but that wasn't his thing. He wasn't a scoring guy. He was defense, 3 blocks per 36 as a wing, 1.7 steals as well. He's going to come in and wreak havoc as a defensive player, and Tibbs would love to have him on the floor as much as possible. At 26, we have the Wizards, this pick coming from the Clippers, and I've been taking center Deron Holmes II out of Dayton, one of my favorite bigs in this draft class. I've seen pro comps to Jalen Smith. I don't think that's a perfect comparison. I think Holmes can be a better player than that, but I just really loved what I saw from him at Dayton. 6'10", 235 pounds, big and physical, 23 points per 36, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks, nearly 40% from deep as a big is way more than good enough. The Wizards take Reed Shepherd with the second pick, and they get a big that they desperately need at pick number 26. I think this is about as perfect as the draft could play out for Washington if Holmes is still here at 26, because they need a big badly. It's like Marvin Bagley and Rashawn Holmes as the centers right now in Washington. So getting a guy like Holmes, I think, could be huge for a team like Washington. He's reportedly stopped working out for teams. A lot of people believe Holmes has a promise from Denver at 28, but if he's here at 26, the Wizards might say, we don't care about that promise. We're going to take him before he even gets to you at 28, and he goes to the Wizards here at 26. At number 27, I have the Timberwolves taking small forward Harrison Ingram out of North Carolina. Just a really good complementary player, kind of compared to Grant Williams as a 3-and-D type of guy, kind of a glue guy more than anything else. But what the Timberwolves needed was bigger, more physical defenders to put on guys like Luka Doncic. Luka exposed them because Jaden McDaniels just isn't big enough. He's lanky, he's tall, but he's just not strong enough, and Luka exposed that. But at 6'7" and a bulky 235, I think Harrison Ingram could help that cause. 13 points per 36, 9.7 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a steal and a half, as well as 39% from deep. I just think he's one of those players that wouldn't be a liability on either end of the floor, and he could help your defense while also not hurting the offense, and I think that's a player that Minnesota really needs. He's been called one of the most slept on players of the draft, but I'm not sleeping on him. I think he deserves to be a first round pick, and I hope he is come next week. At number 28, we have the Denver Nuggets. I've been taking shooting guard Johnny Furphy out of Kansas. Feels like a perfect player to play alongside Nikola Jokic. Really athletic, good cutter, can catch lobs as well. Could get a boost like we saw Bruce Brown get a boost. We've seen their other young guys really benefit from this and from similar skill sets. Christian Brown, really similar skill set to Furphy, but Furphy isn't as small as Brown. He's 6'9" instead and really athletic. I'd like to see what he looks like next to Jokic. I think he could be really cool, really impressive, and just feels like a perfect nugget here at 28. At 29, we have the Utah Jazz, this pick coming from the Thunder, and I'm taking center Yves Missi out of Baylor. Kind of feels like a Jalen Duren type of build. He's not the level of rebounder that we've seen from Duren, who for a while this season was averaging like 15 rebounds a game. Had multiple 20-20 games this season. Jalen Duren is a monster over there in Detroit. Doesn't get nearly enough respect. Missi could give you a lesser version of that. Maybe he's giving you 15 and 12 and just a solid big. This is the wrong logo, by the way. It should be the Jazz, but they need a backup big. That's just what they need. Walker Kessler is a solid starting big, but to get another guy in there, a different change of pace, I think it'd be cool. It looks like they're going to trade John Collins, so they're going to need front court help, and Missi could provide that. And then at number 30, the final pick of the first round and of this mock draft, it is the Boston Celtics taking shooting guard Keyshawn George out of Miami. Big physical wing that can space the floor. 6'8", 210 pounds, 12 points per 36. Wasn't a huge score for Miami, but showed a lot of flashes, especially defensively. Could guard 2 through 4 with ease, 41% from deep as well. Just feels like a player that could help the Celtics even more so in what they're already special at. They're really good defensively, so why not get a big, lanky wing who can also space the floor? Just feels like the rich getting richer here for Boston at number 30, and I really like the pick for them. But let me know what you thought of the mock. Let me know if you liked the picks, what you agreed with, what you didn't. Drop it in the comments down below. Think about subscribing. We're almost at 14,000 subscribers. Super excited for that. So thank you guys for all the support. We're going to be there soon, probably after this video, to be honest. So hopefully you enjoy. Think about subscribing, and we're looking forward to the draft. It's going to be exciting. The trade season is exciting. Glad to see that Caruso move. Super cool. But again, hope you enjoyed. That's going to be it for me. Have a good one. Peace.